weekly Dynasty podcast. We are here with your hosts, Dave Reed, Ryan Wilkinson, and Joey Gallo.
And special guest. Welcome in to the NSFW Dynasty podcast. You may have heard in the intro, this is a little new. We have a special guest, but before we get into that, I'm your host, Dave Reed, joined by my co-hosts, Ryan Wilkinson and Joey Gallo.
How you doing, guys?
Hey, everyone.
Hey, and yes, we have a special guest today. We'd like to welcome in one of our own league mates. He's also the individual who had far and away, I think he had like 60% of the trades in our startup draft and still trading, and we'll get to that later, in the regular season. He is also the brother-in-law of one of our co-hosts here, so no nepotism on this pod, but I'd like to welcome in Michael Schluter.
Hey, thanks, guys. Been excited all day. Can't wait to talk some football.
That's right, and loving the Raven gear. And if you're watching this on video, which hopefully we get on our TikToks, his whole room is painted Ravens purple, basically. That is commitment.
He's provided us with a lot of content this year, so Dave had to get him on the pod.
That is for sure. Honestly, probably the most of anyone. It's him and Scott, basically. Got the most trades. But, yeah, I mean, we got a lot on this pod today. We have a rookie redo draft, so we're going to redo the rookie draft based on what we know now about these players and their situations. Run through what else happened in Week 8, but also, as we do whenever we bring any special guest on our pod, which we've only done once before, so I can still say always, we're going to do a DraftKings lineup battle, four-way battle. I am the undefeated champ. 1-0. Joe is the biggest loser so far, but I'm expecting a big rebound from him. But we'll see how many of the podcasters Schluter can take out. And actually, we didn't mention, would we like to wager on this DK battle again?
I'm always down. I know Schluter's down.
Oh, I'm always.
Throw dollar value at it. It's on record. Let's get it on record.
20 again? More?
Yeah, we could stick with the 20.
All right, we'll stick with 20. Winner takes all, 20 buy-in. I love it. Stakes are high here, boys. But before we get into that, we did have another week of football in Week 8, the final week of October, because we are now in November. But there were a lot of unfortunate injuries, mainly to the quarterback position, which was pretty interesting and devastating. I'm sure a lot of lineups. But the first one that is most devastating of all is Kirk Cousins. He tore his Achilles, and he is out for the year. This is also the last year of his contract, so his future's a bit up in the air. I mean, it already kind of was. The Vikings seem to want to move on from him, so obviously a lot of repercussions in Minnesota. But they also already traded for Dobbs out of Arizona, who's having a solid year as hopefully a stopgap. But for this week, it's going to be Jaron Hall. We got also Matthew Stafford sprained the UCL in his thumb. He is currently day-to-day. Ripon, I think is how you pronounce his name, got in there, points throughout the game. Stafford did get back in, but it is something to watch. He may not be able to go this week. Kenny Pickett hurt his ribs, and Trubisky, Mitchell, the Mitchell, got in. But it does sound like Pickett is going to make sure he plays somehow on Thursday Night Football, so we'll see. Tyrod Taylor. He was starting for the Giants again, but the guy seems to have issues with his ribs always. I feel like that's what happened last time he was playing. He ended up having to go to the hospital. Tommy DeVito of Syracuse fame. I know we got some Syracuse fans on this pod, so we all knew that other people, who's this guy? We're like, it's our man. He did not look great.
Wasn't great.
Was not a great showing. We'll get it. It was really bad. But I think it was so bad, actually, that after the game, Daniel Jones magically is now healed and was cleared for contact and will be playing this week. Desmond Ridder went into concussion protocol, and Heineke came in, and then Ridder was cleared, and Heineke stayed in, and now Heineke is also the starter for Week 9. So very interested to see what's going on in Atlanta. I personally have always been a Heineke fan. He kind of slings it, which will be interesting to see how that goes in Atlanta for the Falcons. Drake London, though, one of his main targets, did leave the game with a groin injury, and not sure if he's going to play this week. It's still something that we got to keep an eye on. So could be a big tight end target game for Heineke there. Darren Waller, left with a hamstring, was ruled out pretty early, just making the game even uglier. And it got an update today that actually might be a multi-week injury, so that's a big blow to the tight end position. Kendrick Bourne was getting an MRI on I think it was his MCL, and it turned out he tore his ACL. So he's out for the year and was having a pretty under-the-radar solid season. Devontae Parker also left with a concussion. Not that anything in New England really matters. That team is a disaster. Curtis Samuel left with a foot-toe injury. He's getting more tests. Did open up some targets for other wide receivers there, which I'm sure we'll talk about. But Dotson finally showed up. Travis Etienne had an ankle injury, but he did get back in and does what Etienne does, and that is score touchdowns. And finally, Josh Palmer had a knee injury. He did get back in there, but we'll see how that progresses as the wide receiver corp is getting pretty thin. But what are some of your guys' thoughts on these injuries?
It'll be interesting to see. Sorry. Be interesting to see how the Atlanta offense looks if Drake London doesn't play. Does Kyle Pitts finally get kind of unleashed, or does it open up the opportunity for someone like Mac Hollins, who honestly has been looking half decent, but
it's Juno.
Desmond Ritter stinks.
Juno Smith is going to be the guy. I need him to be.
Yeah, but we'll see how that offense looks in the absence of Desmond Ritter and with Heineke at quarterback. And I mean, it's convenient that Daniel Jones was just cleared for contact. It actually kind of stunk that Tyrod Taylor went out because the Giants would have won that game if he didn't go out. And he was playing well. If you look at like the metrics for all of Tyrod Taylor's games over the last, I don't know how many years of his career relative to Daniel Jones, I mean, I think you could make a strong case that Tyrod is an objectively better quarterback, but it'll be nice to see
weak ribs
out there. Yeah, it is weak ribs.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like the list just gets longer every week. There's always some crazy injuries, but Kirk Cousins obviously hurts. I think it's interesting there was always some back and forth if you were doing a startup dynasty draft, if you should take Chase over Justin Jefferson, just because Justin Jefferson was tied to Kirk Cousins and we all knew he only had a year or two left. And, Jamar Chase was tied to Joe Burrow for the foreseeable future. So we're going to get an early look at how that offense does without Kirk Cousins. But Jamar Chase might potentially be the dynasty wide receiver one now going forward. And then Stafford, how does that impact Puka, who's been on fire, and Kupp also there. Just a lot of interesting injuries to the quarterback position. And then, like you said, Dave, Tyrod Taylor went out and we got a nice glimpse of some Syracuse fame, but DeVito did not look great. I think he completed 2 passes for negative yardage, and it doesn't look like he'll be playing again. So
yeah, those are not metrics that we're going to want to bring up again at all. But the Cousins injury, I mean, I was already on the fan. I was leaning, I think, the Chase side because of that quarterback situation. You do hope they get an improvement over their current situation, like in the offseason. But it also stinks for Addison, who was like really showing up in Jefferson's absence. So it seemed like that was Cousins was really developing something there. So that really stinks to see a young rookie who was like clearly ascending kind of get some water thrown on his fire. So yeah, it's definitely stinks.
So that Drake London injury, what Joey said, I really feel bad for is the Pitts owners. You know why? Because it's giving them that much more hope. Pitts is going to come around and get all those targets. They're getting that little bit of hope just to crush them again. So,
or even if he does and he gets a bunch of targets, as soon as Drake London comes back, those targets are going away.
Yeah. So I really feel bad for the Pitts owners on that one.
You can't bench Pitts.
Yeah, you can't.
Spoiler alert, I actually, in the first draft of my DraftKings lineup this afternoon, I actually had Kyle Pitts in there on the hope of Heineke and no London. I'm like, you know what, I'm buying it, I'm going Pitts. And then 10 minutes before the pod, I swapped him out.
Yeah. It's funny. Pitts, you always get excited at first, like, all right, I got, and then when you actually have to like rely on him, you're like, I'm sick. I don't like this. I don't want to have to rely on him.
Yeah, the numbers just don't go anywhere. You just see the 2 and the 3, and then
Ah.
finally 4 points, and you're excited. That's what's sad.
I know. I am excited to see Heineke, though. I think in the startup draft, I think, Ryan, you drafted him, and he was someone I was actually as I was excited about because I thought he had a path to starting because I didn't think Ritter was that good. And Heineke, when he was in Washington, he slings it. He can have big games, so he can definitely. I mean, Ritter was throwing more than I was expecting, but I do think he can bring some excitement to the receiving options in Atlanta. So we'll see. But other than that, there was what are some positives or any other non-injury related takeaways did you guys have from Week 8?
Well, sticking with quarterbacks, I feel like we have to talk about Will Levis threw for 4 touchdowns, kind of out of nowhere.
Yes,
I think he did go in the first round in our initial rookie draft, but I think we all kind of were questioning that pick. But after that game, it's kind of validated. 4 touchdowns, going to get a shot and looked pretty good.
Yeah. I mean, he was thrown down to my boy Hopkins for 3 bombs there. But yeah, I mean, I'm out. I was out on Will Levis. Now I have to actually watch and see if I was right or not. It was one game. We do see people flash when people aren't prepared, but it's hard to argue with those type of early season results there.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's interesting to see kind of the fantasy impact of the Cowboys and how it's basically all through the air right now, and squeaky wheel gets the grease. And I think they realized that they needed to get CeeDee Lamb involved more, maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, and ever since then he's just been obviously a feature in the offense. And Tony Pollard has not looked great, basically for the last 6 or 7 weeks at this point. And on the flip side, it's like the opposite in Jacksonville, where Trevor Lawrence is not playing terribly, but his fantasy value is being severely impacted by, like we've discussed many times, the fact that the offense is running entirely through Travis Etienne. So I think for right now, and again, not to spoil, but I think this is a sneak peek into how my DraftKings lineup is going to look later. I'm in on the Cowboys passing attack right now. I think that Dak's looking okay, and they're not really getting too much effectiveness from the ground game, so it's kind of wheels up for CeeDee Lamb.
I love that. But it is very interesting, especially all offseason. They just talked about running the ball, and they're like, we're not good at it. And our best player is CeeDee Lamb, so they're just going to run the offense through him. Another quarterback as well that came back, and I know I'm bringing this one up because we were talking about it last pod, is Joe Burrow. He looks like he's back. That was the thing we were very interested. He was on the bye last week, but he looked healthy. He had a couple of runs. I think he threw for 3 touchdowns, so that was a big performance there. There was the battle of the 2 top picks in Bryce Young versus CJ Stroud. The Panthers got their first win, and Bryce looked the best he's had all year. I wouldn't say I'm like enamored with the performance, but it is good to see the young quarterback growing in his role. But no one is touching Sam Howell, who was the QB1. And anytime Sam Howell does really well, I'm going to talk about it because I love the man. I've been in on him, and I think he's QB8 on the year. I mean, he's been great. He's had a couple bad weeks, but a lot of big ones. But he finally got Jahan Dotson involved, and that's really what I want to talk about. He had 10 targets. It's your first round pick for a wide receiver, finally getting him involved. It's a crazy concept, but seemed to work there. And then another one dear to my heart, Javonte Williams wasn't always the most efficient. He had 27 rushes for 85 yards, but 27 rushes. And he also scored his first touchdown through the air. So he finally might be rounding back into form that we were hoping he would from injury.
Yeah, I think the thing with Javonte Williams is that he just finally got the volume. I was looking, I think that was almost like double the amount of carries he's received up to this point in any game. So if he keeps getting that type of volume, then he probably will produce, but he just hasn't had that through the first 7 weeks. So we'll see if he keeps getting that many attempts going forward. And then, Dotson, obviously 10 targets. maybe some of that had to do with Curtis Samuel going down, and I don't know if he's officially out or not this week. We'll see, but good to see him get the 10 targets, and hopefully he's now back.
Yeah, he had a bunch of targets last week too, and he was struggling with drops and all this other nonsense. It was a lack of targets, but also he just didn't really seem very confident for the first half of the season.
When you're the holder of a football instead of catcher, I think that gets in your head.
Yeah. I mean, it really seems like he's kind of turning a corner. And I know you mentioned Bryce Young. I think I saw something when I was trying to decide who to wager on going into this week. Ended up wagering on Carolina. I heard something on a podcast where they kind of said that there's a strong history of rookie quarterbacks post or following the bye, making kind of like a material leap in QBR and what have you. So it was good to see from Bryce Young. I'm sure that Harry and Dan were maybe now not completely convinced that they had a dud with their first round rookie pick last year, and still not looking great, but it's good to see him get
serviceable. Yeah.
Yeah.
And also with the Bryce Young, I think coming out of the bye as well, they changed the play calling duties. I think Frank Wright is the coach there. He was calling the offensive calls, the plays. That changed. He's no longer making those calls, and it was interesting to see what that would do, and it seemed to be more confident throws for Bryce Young, but also his depth of target increased a bit, which obviously for fantasy you want to see that, but it made it seem like he was a lot more comfortable in the offense there, so that was good to see. Who's not looking comfortable right now is Purdy and the San Francisco 49ers. No idea what's going on with that team right now. They looked literally unstoppable, and wheels have fallen off. I'm not concerned long term, but it's crazy in the NFL to see a team. I remember this was when the Rams back in the day with like Gurley and Goff, they looked like no one could touch them, and then all of a sudden they start losing a few. So NFL teams are smart. They start figuring things out. So that was kind of crazy to see. And also, we can't go without saying the Raiders just cleared house. I think, was it today or yesterday? They got rid of, overnight maybe, got rid of their coach, GM, OC, benched their quarterback. It is a disaster in Vegas right now.
Yeah, and quite frankly, I'm not necessarily sure that Aiden O'Connell is the answer either, but
he's not.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't think anyone thinks he is.
I guess he kind of got what you have. He did play well in preseason. He does kind of sling the ball around a little bit more. So maybe a situation where Davante Adams went in there and was like, "You got to do something, guys. Like, let's just throw something at the wall and see if it sticks."
You also know Aiden O'Connell is not going to say no to Davante Adams when he's like, throw me the ball every play. It's like, whatever you want, Mr. Adams.
I thought about that for the DK lineup. I was like, well, I feel like Adams is going to get a ton of targets, but are they going to be good targets? I don't know. We'll see.
You got to feel for Davante. That guy just got the rug ripped out from under him. Man, what a disaster. But looking into mistakes made or positive picks, let's roll into our rookie redo draft. So just a little reminder of how this is going to work. Our league settings are we're a Superflex tight end premium league. So that's going to be the scoring settings that we keep in mind for this draft. And now when we're drafting, this is not going to be team dependent. We're just going based on who we think is the best value at that point in the draft. We're each going to take a turn taking a pick. So we'll get into the draft in a second, but we'll go in order, 4 picks in a row, and then we'll go back to the top for the drafter there. But we're going to only do the first 2 rounds, and there's 12 picks per round. So we're going to do 24 picks total, which should, I think, come out to about 6 picks each. But before we get in there, any questions, guys?
No, I'm ready. Let me get that first pick.
Yeah, that's right. So with the first pick, the order that we're going to go, Ryan, I let him go first, mainly because Ryan didn't pick in the first round of the rookie draft. He didn't get to pick in the second round, so this is his first time doing that. He also barely picked in the third round. He was the last pick in the third round. So this guy was deprived of rookie picks. And the ones he did make, I don't think you're going to hear about today. So I wanted to give him that chance. And then after that, it'll be Schluter, then Joey, and myself. And then we'll go back to Ryan at the top there. But with that, Ryan, you're on the clock, man. First pick overall. Let's hear it.
Yeah, it's nice to be able to pick in the first 2 rounds for sure.
I know. And just a reminder, with the first pick in our draft, this was Bijan Robinson. So
Yeah, and it wasn't as easy as I think it was when we had the rookie draft, but I did still go with Bijan Robinson. He looks electric when he has the ball. He's RB13 on the year. He really only had one down game in week 7, and that apparently was to an illness. He didn't really play. And he's averaging 13 fantasy points a week if you exclude that week. So, you were expecting a bit more, but it's really solid production. Future is still very bright. He's done this with Ritter at QB, and now Heineke is taking over. So maybe that even helps him out a little more. But everyone compares him to Barkley, who's now in his 5th year with, tons of carries the last couple games. So if he stays at that level, he'll be elite. I still think you got to go with him first overall.
Yeah, I agree. Joe, this was your pick. How do you feel about it?
Yeah, I somebody who's a little bit disappointed in Bijan's production this year. My natural inclination was to kind of be like, let's maybe go quarterback, but I agree, right? If I was put in that spot and needed to make the pick again, I would pick Bijan and hope that Arthur Smith gets strapped on a rocket to the moon.
Well, yeah, I mean, he just seems like this also the safest pick there too. And you're getting top end production, and a lot of times for me when I'm picking at the top, you want something that is not going to bust on you, and Bijan's not busting, so I think he's still deserving of the 101.
It's every week, yeah, and he looks good.
With the next pick, we got Schluter in our draft. This was actually myself, and it was Anthony Richardson at number 2. So where are you going with it?
So Anthony Richardson would be a great pick. Bijan would be a great pick, but I still would take this guy first overall, and that's CJ. Because look at him. He had one down week. He's a rookie taking care of the ball. His first, 3-4 weeks, he had 3 bad linemen, 4 out of 5 linemen, so his linemen are there. He's still done it with injured wide receivers. He's still getting it, and he's taking care of the ball. What more could you ask from a rookie? And the run game there is horrific. So if they get the run game going, it opens up. I think the game's going to slow down for him. He's going to be even better. Wide receivers get healthy, get a little run game. I think he's going to be better than Richardson. Bijan, numbers are down. They got to figure out their QB system. So I think CJ's just solid, from here on out. So I'm going CJ.
Yeah, I actually like it. And, knowing what we know now, Richardson's now, missing the year as well. And who knows how he comes back from injury. I did have CJ Stroud at number 2 or maybe 3 on my list, but he also only has 1 interception on the year to 9 touchdowns. So he's looked pretty good.
He's looked good. He's showing a lot of good leadership and maturity. He sounds good in his, interviews, and it seems like he's the package. I also, not for nothing, I'm maybe a little biased because I thought he should have won the Heisman Trophy last year, but I thought he was showed a little bit more in college than Bryce Young. A lot of that people chalked up to Ohio State having just like an NFL caliber offensive line, but he's behind a pretty
bad one,
below average caliber offensive line right now, and he's doing just fine. So I like it. I was anticipating that Richardson was going to go second, so I'm thinking, well, it'll be a layup here to go to Stroud at 3. But yeah, honestly, he's more of a pocket passer, and like Ryan said, Richardson's already not only has he missed time with the concussion, then he obviously suffered a season-ending shoulder. It's just rushing quarterbacks, and especially he's rushing pretty violently. He's a big guy. I wouldn't be surprised if these type of things are something he faces throughout his career.
Yeah, honestly, for me, the 2 and 3 split difference. I had Stroud at 3 for myself. He's looked great. There's no question about it, and I think he's easily set up to have the longest longevity is on his side, the longest career potentially any of the quarterbacks. The only reason myself I'd give Anthony Richardson the leg up is purely from a fantasy standpoint. I think Richardson's ceiling's higher. He'll win you championships. I don't know if Stroud has the ceiling to really get you there to win you, but at the same time, like I still think he's going to be a back end at worst back end QB1, and could have blow up games. It's just I always go for the ceiling plays, but again, that is splitting hairs there, and I think Stroud is probably safer as we've already seen based on this year with injuries. So I like the pick. But moving on to number 3, this was Bryce Young at number 3. I'm going to guess that's not the pick right now, but Joe, the clock's on for you now.
Yeah, that's not going to be the pick, unfortunately. Yeah, so I will take Anthony Richardson here. Again, just kind of, I share your opinion, Dave, when it comes to Richardson, where if I was choosing who I would prefer to be quarterback for the Giants, I would, in a second, choose Stroud. If I was choosing who I would want to be quarterback for my fantasy team, I'd probably choose Richardson. He had 2 games of 10-plus rushing attempts, 4 touchdowns in 3 games to start the season. He actually looked competent passing the ball, too. The Colts were winning games. So I do think the rushing upside is pretty strong there. And, yeah, I mean, if he can stay healthy, he'll do a lot of good things.
No argument for me, as you know.
It will be interesting to see just where, we talk about Bryce Young and not to,
where he goes.
Make too many more jokes at Harry's expense, but it'll be interesting to see exactly how far he slides. I'm curious.
There are a couple names on that go in the first round that I'm interested to see where they fall. So, and again, we're tracking to see the difference in these picks as we make them. So, CJ Stroud made a 2-spot leap because he was at 104, which is where I'm going to be drafting. So, CJ Stroud went 4th. The young slide is going to continue. So, I'm actually torn between 2 players here, and the difference for me is whoever I think has the higher potential for avoiding injury or having a longer career. And for me, that means I'm going to lean Jahmyr Gibbs at number 4. He just had his first game this past week, showing out, getting all the work. Granted, Montgomery was not playing yet, but you started seeing that explosiveness really take shine, and he could be a game breaker there. And he can handle a decent workload. He is a little bit smaller than you'd want your feature back to be, and I don't think he'll ever be a true feature back. But you've also seen games with him having like double-digit targets already. And that's kind of what you were hoping. They spent, the 12th overall pick on him. And I think Gibbs can be someone who can definitely win a title for you. So that's why I'm leaning Gibbs. But I'll withhold who I was thinking with my other pick until he gets selected. But I'm curious to see where you guys will go with the guy who I was, split between on this one.
Yeah, I mean, I think Gibbs makes sense. Really, the only thing that holds him back from someone like Robinson is that Montgomery is there. But we've seen what he can do without him. So, obviously a solid pick.
Yeah.
This next pick is tough, honestly, I think. There's a couple guys on my mind, and it kind of comes down to what position I really want to go with.
And this is the 5th pick, which was Jahmyr Gibbs in our rookie draft. So it is tough.
It's tough. This could be a little biased because I don't really have one in our league, but I'm actually going to
think quarterback, Ryan.
No. We just don't have a tight end. I'm going to go Sam Laporta. I mean, he's breaking records. He's tight end number 3 on the year already. I just feel like he's already jumped into that Kelsey, Andrews, Hawkinson tier. And we are in a tight end premium league. Looking at the list, Dalton Kincaid went at 11 in our startup draft. So, I don't know. I'm going with him. I know it's a huge jump up, but I think he's proved it, and he's really been producing game after game. Goff looks good, and there are other weapons on that team, and he's still producing.
So this is the biggest jump from the rookie redraft. It was 16 slots. I actually had him at 8 for me, so he was not getting past my next pick. So I don't think here at 5 that's too much of a reach in my opinion, especially in the tight end premium. But curious to see what our other co-hosts think of this and our special guest.
Yeah, for me personally, I think I would have taken maybe 2 or actually 3 guys definitively. Well, yeah, three guys definitively before him, which puts him at 1, 2, 3, 4,
8.
8.
Yeah.
I think we're probably thinking about the same guys.
Mm-hmm.
I don't. I wouldn't necessarily like if we were actually doing this draft right now. I wouldn't blame you for making the pick though, because quite frankly, depending on need, if I had a team where I actually was kind of deep at wide receiver, I would have absolutely no issue taking Laporta here. He looks awesome, and he kind of looks like Gronk out there. Like I can't be the only one who feels that way, but I just kind of feel like he reminds me of Gronk, the way he just kind of like is like huge and actually really quick and just kind of like flattens guys over the middle. It's cool.
Yep, that's just what I was going to say. I was going to say the eye test. He meets it. He looks good. He's fluid. He finds the gap. He looks like he knows what he's doing, especially for a rookie. They say tight ends are slower to come into the NFL. He looks good. Great.
You never see a team lean this much on a rookie tight end. It's crazy.
No, that was going to be my pick, right? That was a great pick.
Well, with the next pick then, at the 6th overall pick, that leads us with Schluter then. This was JSN. This was, I think, also Schluter. Was this your pick as well?
This was my first
so
pick, yeah.
You get to potentially redo it or take the guy again. We'll see what happens.
Being my first year Dynasty, I'm starting to realize how valuable quarterbacks really are. Even if you have too many of them, that's just a lot of value sitting there on your bench. You could get whoever you want late in the season. So I'm going to go with Bryce Young because somebody's going to need him at some time. And he's just sitting there waiting for a couple first-round picks or a running back if I need him, So I'm going Bryce Young. Nothing too good to say about his performance, but
the slide ends.
He's value on my bench for, coming into it.
Yeah, I actually don't think it's a bad pick. I think a lot of people are on him, but it's pretty rare for rookie QBs to make like a huge fantasy impact right away. And I feel like with Richardson and Stroud kind of doing that, Young has been sort of written off compared to them. But we've seen a lot of turnover at the QB position this year already, and he's the clear starter in Carolina. He should get to improve all year long. And like you said, in a super flex league, quarterbacks are super valuable. We've seen how quickly a quarterback situation can change. So he's got a lot of value, I think.
Yeah, I mean, he's been improving each week, which I think is the positive thing to see. When he started out, he kind of looked like a deer in headlights, but the past 2 games he's played, actually, you've seen some major improvements. So, yeah, I mean, that's all you want from a rookie quarterback. We get spoiled when we see other rookies like come out and are game ready. And it kind of makes you overestimate or underestimate how difficult that position is in the transition from college. So I still think that's a solid pick. And yeah, in super flex, obviously the value is there. But moving over, I think this was also a Schluter pick back in the original draft. The 7th pick was Zay Flowers, but now it's Joey Gallo's pick.
Yeah, so for me here, it's between 2 guys. It's a tough call. And I'm going to actually make a similar case against picking this guy that Dave made when he took Jahmyr Gibbs. I'm between 2 guys, and I think roster, all else equal, I'm going to take Jackson Smith and Jigba because I think that from a longevity standpoint, he will be an asset a lot longer than this other guy that I was looking at. And look, I mean, we could all be like severely eating crow if this other guy, which I mean, to me, Dave's going to take him next, so it's Devon A-Chain for sure.
Yeah.
He keeps up on this ridiculous pace of scoring a touchdown once every 4 times he touches the ball or whatever it is. Then even if he only like sustains that explosiveness for 2 or 3 years, it's going to be an incredible 2 or 3 years. But I think I liked what I see from JSN, even as a third option in that offense. The times where he has the opportunity as the top 2 option, he looks great. He scored the last 2 weeks. And, I think if his situation was different, he would be putting up some serious numbers right now.
Yeah, I like it. And Lockett's, is he gone after this year? Is it last year?
He is. This is the last year? Dave would know.
I think it's the last year of his contract. Who knows if he's gone yet, obviously. Like, I still think he's a productive wide receiver.
That's true.
But, like, even they bring him back, the pecking order may change. But, Yeah, I mean, you do expect JSN. Obviously, his role has already started to increase. That's only going to continue, especially going into next year. So, I mean, I love JSN as well.
That's what I like to hear.
Yeah. I mean, Schluter. I've been trying to get him.
Yeah.
Not probably going to happen, but that is it. That is someone who I was 5 and 6. If you picked the other HN, I would have gone JSN too, Joe. So I like the pick there.
Yeah, I just feel like the longevity is a concern. If I was a team, it's the same situation with Laporta, right? Like if I was on a team where I really needed a running back and I was set at wide receiver, then I'd have absolutely no problem going HN there. So, but all else equal, I like Jason. And I think he would be a buy at this point in Dynasty if you can get an owner who's maybe a little impatient, or I mean, I don't know, maybe
an owner that just likes to trade.
He's like the only guy. There's two guys basically that Schluter is not allowing to trade, and it's the two rookie wide receivers that he drafted.
So I mean, I know that he's the first wide receiver off the board in this draft, which says a lot. But it's
talent's there. That's why he was the first in the NFL draft.
The 7th pick, though, that's kind of why it seems a little bit like a buy to me, because I'm just like, all right, between the 4 of us, we just drafted 6 other guys before him, so maybe, just maybe, I'm not saying it's you, Schluter, but if there's somebody out there in your other leagues, dynasty leagues, who are maybe be persuaded to give him up for less than fair value.
Yeah, I mean, I heard people trade away Olave for less too, so it's it's possible.
Yeah, and with JSN, like we mentioned, he's off the board here at 7. There's 4 wide receivers, in my opinion, that are all kind of vying for that top rookie wide receiver, and it's all splitting hairs, and it depends on kind of how you view what you view is the most valuable trade. Like JSN has not shown it yet. There have certainly been other rookie wide receivers who have looked better so far. And some of them, their situations have kind of turned around. Like Addison has looked much better, but his situation is rough now. You don't know where you can get there. Puka has looked incredible, but situation, I don't know now. Stafford's already hurt and he's older, and he still has Cup there. And then even Zay Flowers, I'm sure we'll get into these picks and it'll be interesting to see their order. But Zay Flowers is the 4th one in my opinion, is well vying for the top spot. He's tied to Lamar, but he hasn't shown the true alpha yet on that team. He gets targets, but they're not the deep targets that you want to see out of your high-end pick. So, what's his ceiling really there? But it's super safe floor and super safe situation. So, I think you can put those 4 in any order, and I don't think I'd argue at all. We'll see where they land here, and we're going to have to wait because at number 8, I'm not going wide receiver, as Joey alluded to. I'm going Devon Achane. And during our draft, this is where Quinton Johnson went, who is the next player I think we're going to witness a slide on. But Devon Achane, we talked about it. The guy, I think, was he averaging over 12 yards per touch on the rushing? It's absolutely crazy. He's game breaker talent, and he's in the perfect system for him in Miami. And his competition right now is Mostert, who is, I think, 31, which is crazy in itself that he's as productive as he is right now in that system. But you got to imagine he's going to be leaving soon. They don't trust really anyone else on the ground in Miami right now, even with HN on IR. It hasn't really been Salih Ahmed. I don't even remember the guy's name. And then Jeff Wilson hasn't really been getting the touches that we thought he would. So when Devon comes back, I expect him to continue to blow up. And he's, in my opinion, a top 10 easy dynasty running back and has absolute game-breaking talent. So I think he gets bumped up here in the rookie redo draft.
Yeah, I had him high on my list as well. I think for every reason you said, Mostert is old. He shouldn't be there too much longer, and there's no one else. But does the knee injury already give you any concern? Because it's literally his first year. We've seen how many injuries happen at the running back position. He's already out till, I think they said, at least week 11. No concern there long term?
No, myself, no. I mean, he's smaller, which is why I went Gibbs in the first pick, for sure. They're also going to be safe with him. They have the bye to week 10, which is kind of why it got extended to week 11. But again, that's also the risk of running backs. But this isn't like a long-term injury. Like, people get nicked up here and there. I mean, Montgomery's been on and off in Detroit all season long. No one seems to care about that. And so I'm not overly concerned, but the fact that he is smaller and could get hurt more, which is the only reason I went Gibbs over him. But when you have a talent that electric, I think that kind of overpowers the fear of the health, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, you're here for a good time, not a long time.
Yeah.
That's pretty much.
But moving on to the 9th pick, back to Rye Dogs here. This is where Jordan Addison went during our rookie draft.
Yeah, and I'm going to go wide receiver, but as Dave already kind of touched on, I feel like it's a really hard pick. I had an order, but like Dave said, Puka's now, dealing with Stafford having a injury. Who knows what happens there? Jordan Addison probably would have been my pick, but now Kirk's gone. Who knows what's going on with the quarterback situation there? So I'm actually going to skip both of them, and I'm going to go with Zay Flowers.
Wow, what a pick.
Yeah, Schluter's going to love that pick. Bit of an up and down year. I don't think he's had any real monster game, but he's pretty much the wide receiver one there. Obviously, Mark Andrews is kind of the wide receiver one there, but should have a huge role, and he's tied to Lamar Jackson. So you have to feel at least comfortable with his future on the Ravens. And like we said, some of the other receivers that you could take here, the future is just a little more up in the air.
Yeah. I mean, my argument was just he looks good. I watch every game pretty intensely, and finally the Ravens drafted a first-round wide receiver that's, just getting looks, getting targets, actually catching the ball. They call him joystick. He's moving back and forth. He's actually making people miss. Hollywood didn't do that. Hollywood Brown, he kind of, I don't know, at Baltimore, he kind of caught the ball and dove to the ground, or he never really made a guy miss. Zay Flowers is actually exciting to watch, and maybe it's the new offensive coordinator. He's spreading the ball out a little bit more. But my only they spread the ball out a lot. Lamar's throwing it to a lot of people. He's got a lot of mouths to feed. So it's good to watch Zay get. He got 3 games with double-digit targets. That's great. But he's going to have the high games, I think. But he's still going to have some low games too. So. But I love the pick, right? Obviously, that was, again, going to be my pick. But.
That's the frustrating thing about Flowers, and I completely agree with everything you said. It's like Nelson Aguilar is getting targets, and they spread it around quite a bit. And not to mention, you could always have a game like this past week where Gus Edwards is rushing for 3 touchdowns, or Lamar is rushing for touchdowns, or it's just like a lot of, when you look at the box score. And I mean, I guess like the fact that, like you said, Flowers still has multiple games with double-digit targets is a testament to how good he's been. But it would be nice to see, like on these weeks where, on like the 30% of weeks in the season where Rashad Bateman is healthy and out there, he's getting 2 or 3 targets, and the running backs are getting targets, and before you know it, like you look at the box score and it's like 12 guys.
Yeah, I don't like scrolling when I'm looking at the receivers. That's annoying. I want like 4 guys tops.
Yeah.
Yep.
But yeah, he passes the eye test, and he's a Boston College guy, so
yeah,
go Eagles.
Yeah. Big fan here. Syracuse, Boston College, Ravens. We're doing good on the spot. A lot of fan favorites. But moving on to the 10th pick, it's going to Schluter. But back in our draft, this is where Will Levis actually went, who at the time seemed like a higher pick, but I don't know. We'll still to be determined there, but looked a little bit more optimism. But we'll see if he goes this high again. I feel like he might not, but Schluter, take it over.
As much as I'd love to take a third QB just to have him on my bench.
Yeah.
I'm going to go with Dalton Kincaid, and that's looking for the future. Like we said before, tight end premium. Had a great week. You can't argue anything he did this last week. So future's bright. He's got the gunslinger Josh Allen, so I'm all for it. Put him in my lineup, forget it.
Yeah, no, I like that pick. Obviously, with Knox out, he thrived, and having Josh Allen's tight end for the foreseeable future is definitely not a bad thing. So only concern there is Knox comes back, but it should definitely be Kincaid's job to lose. So I like to pick.
Yeah, I wonder. Do you guys know Dawson Knox's contract situation? I'm gonna just quickly
check it out. I mean, I like the pick too. He was. I wouldn't have gone this spot with him, but he was going to be in the next probably 4 to 5 picks for me. But again, tight end premium. He's getting the targets now. He's looking like he's becoming more of a focal point, which was something Joey has been clamoring for literally all season until finally the past 2 weeks. So it has been nice to see them make that offensive philosophy change. And I think he's totally deserving of it, this pick, if he keeps up, especially in this format. But Joe, I don't know if you were able to get that contract information.
Yeah, so they have a potential out after next year. So he's definitely going to be there in 24. They have a potential out, but his contract actually goes through 2026 before he's a free agent again, which I feel like is a challenge because honestly, Dawson Knox is like the only difference between Sam Laporta and Dalton Kincaid is Dawson Knox. Yeah. But hopefully, I mean, look, like last week he did even after Knox went out 2 weeks ago, like the past week and a half, he's been, he's done an impressive job at demonstrating that he should be the number one. And yeah, hopefully it's not going to be a situation where in 4 weeks we've got a Dawson Knox reemergence because.
Yeah, he'll probably just snipe all the touchdowns, but I think Kincaid is going to be a focal point. I don't think he's going to see a diminished target share as much as he may just see the value of those targets slightly go away if he doesn't get all the red zone looks because that's where Knox thrives. He's not really middle of the field.
He's already better than Pitts 8 weeks in. That's all.
That is most tight ends about 6 games in their career, at least from a touchdown perspective.
Name a tight end, and they're better than Pitts.
It's brutal. Pitts is just so talented. Just go somewhere, trade Pitts, please. But moving on to the 11th pick. This is actually where Dalton Kincaid went in the actual rookie draft. But now we're passing the torch to Joey. Who are you going to take at 11?
This is an extremely tough pick for me between two guys. I would be intensely lamenting over this one.
It's going to make my decision easy. So
yeah, I mean, it's kind of grasping at straws. I think I would go Puka Nacua. For a couple reasons. Mostly just because there's a little bit less certainty with his situation, but at the same time, Cooper Kupp isn't exactly young, and he's tied to a good head coach in Sean McVay. We'll see what the quarterback situation is like with the Rams beyond this year, and we'll see if McVay is even, like, how much longer Sean McVay is the head coach of the Rams beyond this year. But Jordan Addison is still the 1B in that offense. He'll continue to be the 1B for however long. And you could probably say the same about Puka, but for the full body of this work this season, I think I would lean that way, 51-49 over Addison, who was a little more of a flesh in the pan the last 2 or 3 weeks. But honestly, I love Addison too. He looks incredible. I'd be happy with either of them, and this is just an absolutely brutal decision to have to make.
I'm sorry we did this to you.
I think it's actually the right pick for all the reasons you said. Kupp's a little older. Stafford is still there, even though he might be injured. Addison's, Jefferson's the guy there and is going to be for the foreseeable future. Addison will always be number 2, and their quarterback situation is way more up in the air right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Puka was the call. That's who I would have taken. I actually had him at number 7 on my board. So I actually think that's great value for you, Joe, at 11. And from our rookie draft, just because this number popped and you don't see this often, he shot up 31 picks from where he was actually drafted in our rookie. He was at the 406, pick 42. I believe that was one pick before me, and it stings because it was, again, Canellis, who sniped in the starter draft and rookie draft every young wide receiver right before me. So that was a great value. Kind of going down to the pick. That was actually, looking back in that draft, pick 42, 43, and 44 was Puka Nacua, Michael Wilson, and Tank Dell. A threesome that you don't typically see too many hits that late in the draft. Some leagues don't even do 4 and 5 rounds in the rookie draft, so they would have been like free agents after the rookie draft. And that was a 3-pack of guys who are all useful, and a couple that look like they might be potentially higher end options. So always value there, even if you're trading for those seemingly invaluable 4th round picks. You can maybe hit a dart throw there.
I'll trade you some 4th round picks.
Yeah, Puka, right? But moving to the 12th pick, this is where Zach Charbonnet went, and I'm now on the board. And Joey made the pick easy for me. My 9th overall rookie on my board is Jordan Addison. The guy has looked great this year, showing out. Obviously, situation stinks right now. The risk of not having Cousins was already kind of baked in, I think, initially when you're drafting him. Now it's just earlier, and things are a little bit in flux. So long term, I don't think his long term outlook has changed. I think it's just the next 9 or so games outlook has changed for him. But you have the confidence now that you've seen it, that if he has a competent quarterback, he can show up, and whether he has JJ there or not, because now he's the number 1, so you think he's getting more defensive coverage or like a higher, a tougher matchup there. So even though it does look like there's no competition, he should get all the targets. He has a tougher defensive matchup, and he's still showing out there. So I think he's got a lot of talent. He's beating these guys. And some of the plays he's made, those are grown man plays. Like Kirk Cousins threw an absolute interception, and Addison just ripped it out and ran for a touchdown, which is a crazy play. So I think the guy is a bona fide talent there, and I'd be very happy to be able to grab him with the 12th overall pick in my rookie draft.
Yeah, we talked about those definitely being the next 2 picks, which makes this pick really tough.
The 201. We are now officially in the second round of the rookie redraft. Excuse me, a redraft. And it's a hard thing to say. I don't know if you guys tried it. And this is where Kendre Miller went back in July, I believe is when we did our draft.
Yeah, I will not be going with him. I think I'm going to keep it going with wide receiver here, and I'm actually going to go with Rice. I think I'm going to go with Rashee Rice. I just feel like that wide receiver core is wide open there. It's like Sky Moore, Tony stinks. Someone has to be Patrick Mahomes' top guy once Kelsey goes. I think Rice has a good chance to be that guy. He's starting to pick it up a little bit. Hasn't had any huge games, but he's averaging like 9 fantasy points a game. Looks like he's averaging like 5 or 6 targets a game from Patrick Mahomes. So I'll take that at pick 13.
I mean, I love it. That's exactly who I had on my board next as well. So everything you said, he looks explosive. He's getting the targets in that offense. Not really. There's not a lot of not much in the equation that you need to really figure out there. Just like an explosive, fast talent, getting targets for Mahomes. First pick of the second round. I think that's what you want.
Yeah, it's a win-win. Win-win.
100%.
Yeah,
that's who I would have gone with there as well.
So moving down to the 202, pick number 14. This is where Marvin Mims Jr. went, which I actually thought was a pretty good pick back then. I think I remember giving props for it. But the clock is now on Schluter to see where he goes. And there's still a good amount of decent options. We're getting a little deeper here, but still a lot of good talent on the board.
Yeah, of course I liked Rice, but I'm going to stick with the wide receiver. I got the 2 QBs. I got the tight end. So there's not too many of the higher upside wide receivers, you could say. So I'm going Quentin Johnson. I know we started slow, real slow, but he stepped it up last game. When I was watching the game, Herbert didn't even look at him probably the first quarter. You watch your wide receiver and you're like, oh, he's on the top. And then they'd look left and you're like, not even looking at him. And then he started doing some crossing routes and getting involved, and he caught some going across, and then he actually got tossed to the corner of the end zone, so they're looking at him. they're trying to feed him. He threw it a little low, threw it a little higher. He's a big guy. Probably could have got it. So he's getting more involved. So he's looking promising, and he's got the next 4 or 5 years with Herbert. So it can't be too bad.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. And Keenan Allen is old. I think he's also 31. So who knows what happens with him? And Mike Williams is obviously always injured and out for the year. So, yeah, I think, he's probably tied to Herbert for the foreseeable future and might eventually move into a higher slot on the wide receiver list. So not a bad pick.
Yeah, I mean, he's got the draft capital too. So you know that they're going to try to, even if he doesn't have the biggest rookie year, they're going to try to make that thing happen. So that's the positive when you see you like the safety net, I guess, you get when you draft rookies with high draft capital. They get more chances than guys that don't have that capital. And when you're in the second round to get a first round drafted wide receiver, that's really good value. I mean, that's kind of, I think, last year where Jahan Dotson was landing a lot and proved to be a decent value. Obviously, slow this year, but he's getting the opportunity. So I don't hate that pick at all. Now, moving to the third pick in the second round, this is where Devon Achane actually went. But now he's no longer on the board, and it's Joey's pick. So we'll see who he goes with.
Yeah, so with the 203 in this position, I think this would be the time to take Zach Charbonnet. I mean, look, right? He has been getting an increasing, like a growing snap percentage basically throughout the season. Last game, he played almost 60% of snaps. He's had weeks of, on his paltry amount of carries that he gets, he looks great. I mean, week 2, 4 carries, 4 yards per carry. Week 3, 9 carries, 5+ yards per carry. Week 4, 5 carries, 6 yards per carry. Last week, 5 carries, 10 yards per carry. He looks great. And the only thing that kind of stands in his way is that Ken Walker also looks great. But everything that we kind of thought Zach Charbonnet was going to be in the preseason and that whole kind of pre-draft process, bruising, quick, a lot of explosiveness, he's looked exactly like that. And he's not as involved in the passing game as he could be or as you would like, just because he's not involved in the entire game plan as much as you would like. But, it's hard to really pass up on that much talent at the running back position super late in like the middle of the second round. And, running backs get hurt quite often. So, who knows, right? Kenneth Walker looks great. But I think as time goes on, that will become, especially into next year, a lot more of a true duo than just, 80-20 Walker.
If Walker wasn't there, would you take Gibbs or Charbonnet?
Oh, Gibbs still.
Yeah.
It's really close.
Yeah, that's what I mean. You're one injury away from a top 5 guy. So that's huge upside to.
Like, you could make a strong argument that if Charbonnet was by himself, like Ken Walker, a lot of the reason why Kenneth Walker is great is because he gets absolutely fed inside the 10-yard line. He's got like the most inside the 10 carries in the whole league. So if you just project those carries onto Charbonnet, I mean, yeah, he would be probably in the top 5. So yeah, I mean, like you said, just because he's got a talented guy in front of him, there's only so far that you can let somebody who looks that good slide.
Yep. And I will say, I think this past week, granted, I think Walker was dealing with an injury. Pretty sure Charbonnet outsnapped Walker this past week. So you've actually been seeing Charbonnet getting more and more involved in the offense. I know that was part of what you were talking about, Joe, but I think it was surprising to see just how involved he was this past week. Again, I think part of that had to do with the Walker injury, but even without a Walker injury, I would expect to see this at least turn into a 60-40 split, which even if he's getting that type of workload, I think he'll still be in potential RB2, which is a solid pick here. But moving on to the 204. This is where Rashee Rice actually went last time in our real rookie draft. But it's on me now. And honestly, there's a couple wide receivers I'm still looking at. And I think I'm going to go with one that, honestly, I wasn't that excited about back in the rookie draft. But at this point, he's just seeming like a very solid receiver, which is, at this point in the draft, could shoot for the upside. But this guy seems like he could have a decent game, but he's got a good floor, and that's Josh Downs. I wasn't high on him for a couple of reasons. One is the fact that he's small. I just don't like my wide receivers that tiny. But I think he was coming from UNC. He just gets open, and he's got great hands. I think coming out of college, he's actually one of the better contested catch wide receivers in the draft, which is crazy for someone of his size. But the other issue that was always being placed and still potentially there is that Anthony Richardson's accuracy wasn't the best. But what I did see before Anthony Richardson got hurt, he would still have a couple bad passes, but his passing did look good and like it was improving. So I do think going into next season and beyond, I think he'll continue to improve. And that's only going to be a positive for Josh Downs. But Josh Downs gets open. He also can run some shorter underneath routes, which are higher percentage passes that I could see Anthony Richardson targeting when he needs to. So I do think Josh Downs will grow with Richardson. I think Pittman will still be there. I don't think they're going to let him walk after his contract's up this year. But I'm very confident in Downs, which I did not expect going into the season. So that's the pick for me here.
Yeah, I actually did have him next on my list, but I was concerned with Richardson because that's the thing. I looked at the games and he didn't do well in the games that Richardson played, and a lot of his production has been with Minshew. So it'll be interesting to see what happens next year, but definitely one of the guys that I think makes sense taking around here.
Yeah, surprised myself there, man. Itty bitty guys. But moving forward with the 17th overall pick, the 5th pick of the second round, this is where Izzy Anaconda, or whatever you say, this guy is a running back for the Jets, was drafted. Probably not going to go here, but we'll see what Ryan does with this pick.
Yeah, definitely not. I gotta go with this guy. I'm pumped for him. 4 touchdowns last game. I'm taking Will Levis.
All right.
Schluter talked about it before. Superflex league quarterbacks are pretty valuable. Tannehill doesn't seem like the answer there. He's also older, so I'm not too worried about what happens with him. And if Will Levis keeps playing like he played last week, he could be the long-term answer there. And getting that in the second round is huge value.
I don't disagree. I mean, getting a starting quarterback in a super flex in the middle of the second round is incredible value. Obviously, questions if he is still going to be the long-term option, but honestly, that's the only reason he's falling back here and why you're potentially getting a value on him. He has all the physical and arm talent in the world as well. He just is a weirdo, which I like. I just personally cannot get on my team. I think that's my issue there. But that's silly bias, and maybe that's stopping me from winning. So we'll see. But yeah, I don't know what everyone else's thoughts on Will Levis after his outburst this past week.
Yeah, I don't know how we passed on a rookie QB that tossed 4 touchdowns this long, but it's a good pick. I mean, like I said before, I love stashing QBs, so why not?
Yeah, if you got to figure, right? Like if we're assuming we're drafting right now and all we have is one data point on Will Levis and it's that he went out there and threw 4 touchdowns last week, it makes sense. And to Schluter's point, right? Like in real life, if there's a QB needy team, like, I don't know, Harrison trying to make up for his Bryce Young blunder, he might actually take a shot on Will Levis.
Draft a quarterback with a 3rd overall pick? What do you mean needy? Yeah. I mean, I don't think anyone's arguing with the value there. Moving forward at the 6th pick of the second round, this is where Jaden Reed, Green Bay Packers rookie wide receiver, was taken. But now Schluter's got the pick, so we'll see what he does with it.
Well, just for fun, so I had C.J. Stroud out there as my QB first. So for fun, I'm going to throw Tank Dell on there, get that combination and see how they grow together and, get that little double whammy touchdown.
Mm-hmm.
Really punish my opponent that week and make him fly a little bit,
Yeah, I like it. That was actually who I was between. I think he's a solid wide receiver too with Nico Collins there. And Stroud has been looking better. So
Yeah, no, I agree. I think as I was kind of thinking about my upcoming pick, I'm like looking at wide receiver, and it's like, do I look at Mims? Mims is probably sliding a little bit, and then I was kind of, for me, if I was going wide receiver there, it would have been between Mims and Dell. And honestly, Dell, again, we talked about undersized wide receivers, but he's looked good. He's real fast, and like I said, he's tied to a good young quarterback. So
Yeah, he's already had a blow up game as well. Obviously,
yeah,
had a concussion, but he's going to be back. And yeah, he gets open.
yeah,
What is with these tiny wide receivers? The NFL's changing, guys.
yeah, sure is.
But yeah, I mean, going to it, Joe, as you mentioned, this is your pick. So this would be the 7th now pick in the second round. This is where Roshan Johnson actually went back in July. So what are you going to do with it?
Yeah, ironically, I'm actually going to take Roshan Johnson here.
All right.
I think that there's enough uncertainty with the Chicago backfield going forward in the future. Khalil Herbert looks certainly good, but is he the type of guy that's going to keep a stranglehold on that backfield? I don't think so. Roshan has looked good in the passing game. He's looked good at limited opportunities when he's gotten the ball, when he's gotten carries. And I think that there's a lot of potential upside there for the future, tied to, hopefully a quarterback for the future with Justin Fields. And I think that, yeah, I mean, basically I make this pick here because if I'm kind of like going through my process of who I'm looking at running back, it's kind of like between Roshan, Tyjae Spears, and those are really the guys that I'd be looking at. And then for at wide receiver, we talk about Mims and maybe Jaden Reed, who's looked pretty good for Green Bay to this point. Of all those guys, I think I'm probably the most excited to draft Roshan here.
Yeah, interesting because obviously, like I personally like Tajay more, but obviously Tajay probably doesn't have potentially as long of a lifespan as Roshan has. But it's hard to argue with either one. Like you expect Henry to potentially be gone, but also that's not going to be my pick here. About running back here, but I do like everything you said about Roshan, and it's nice to see someone picked in their exact spot there. Just it's pleasing on the chart there. But for me, it's now the 8th pick in the second round. This is where Michael Mayer went, which I think actually could be a solid pick still, but it's not where I'm going to go. I think I'm going to end the slide here, take Marvin Mims. He's just an electric talent, and the situation just kind of stinks right now. But I don't think Juju's going to be here next year. Sutton might not be here next year, and I think eventually, like once you start getting the playing time and the targets to Mims, I think you're going to see a lot of good things. I don't have the stat out right now, but I'm sure like the targets per routes run for Mims is crazy high. Whenever he's on the field, he's usually out there for a reason, and that's to break the game open. And he's done that at a pretty high clip. So to get another, there's a theme here with all my picks. They're all game-breaking talents. I'm trying to win a championship here and want the guys to the high upside. And I think Mims does that. So he's the pick here.
yeah, and I'll just go right into mine because I was hoping that Spears would fall to me. So that's who I'm going to take here. Henry was almost out the door already. Seems like he's staying put, but probably doesn't have too much long left. And Spears looks like he'll be the guy that'll take it over. So I think that's pretty good value this late in the pick around.
At the 209, not as good as value as the pick that it was back in the rookie draft of Sam Laporta, as we've already seen, but I still think that's a solid pick. Moving on to Schluter at the 10th pick in the second round. We got Jonathan Mingo. That was the pick back in July, but we'll see with Schluter if he agrees with that or goes a different direction.
You know what? I'm sticking with the double whammy theme of Mingo because I got Bryce Young earlier, so I'm just gonna double it up again.
Nice.
And I'm gonna stick with that and hope they get that combination, start clicking, and win me a championship.
You actually did see Mingo start to get a bit more involved coming out of the bye too. So something to keep an eye on. Even in redraft, he actually might be getting a lot more involved in the offense. And you do see a lot of times these rookie wide receivers step up. Second half of the year, we've been a little spoiled again with the early production, but typically it's the second half of the year they start getting integrated, and it seems like that's starting to happen with Mingo. And as you said, tied to a rookie quarterback, not a bad thing to have. And moving to the second to last pick in the second round, this was where Jalen Hyatt actually went by. That was yours truly, but the pick is now Joey Gallows.
Yeah, so 3 guys I'd be looking at here, depending on need. A running back, a wide receiver, a tight end. A running back, I'd be looking at Tank Bigsby, just because you obviously can see what the running back in that Jacksonville offense can do, and it's not like Travis Etienne is a big and brooding and non-injury risk type profile guy. So, and then 2 Packers, Jaden Reed and Luke Musgrave. I think that's probably the direction I would lean between. It would be between Musgrave and Reed. They both looked good. I picked a lot of wide receivers. I think I'll take Musgrave. It's a tight end premium league. I liked what I've seen from the both of them. It's kind of I would put them in a similar tier, and I'll give Musgrave the edge because tight end premium, and I've picked a lot of wide receivers.
A great pick.
I love the pick too. I think he showed a lot. The rookie tight ends this year actually been really strong overall. And yeah, Musgraves has been key. Obviously, he has a little injury right now, but it's nothing serious, and he's looked great. And for me to close out, Luke Musgrave was actually the last pick in the second round during our real rookie draft. A few guys I'm looking here at is another tight end, Michael Mayer, but that situation in Las Vegas is kind of a mess. Not sure if you want to be a part of it. Jaden Reed, as mentioned, is someone I've been pretty impressed with. Demario Douglas is someone I'm rising on. I'm not sure if I'd take him here, but someone just to keep an eye on. Michael Wilson obviously has risen up as well. But the guy I'm going to go with was the guy I went with in the real draft, the pick before, and that's Jalen Hyatt. He's seemingly getting a bit more involved. He, again, is game breaker talent. Theme for me. I'm always shooting for upside. But his knock coming in the draft was he wasn't a good route runner, but he seems like he's improving there, and he's beating DBs in the NFL. Like, he was crushing them in college, and that trade has carried over. Obviously hasn't had too much production this past week or so. It was a disaster in the passing game. Who hopefully with Daniel Jones coming back and the offensive line and Andrew Thomas coming back, there's a little bit more time to throw in those passes and we can see more. But he's beginning to flash a bit, and I'd be getting excited. And at this point in the rookie drafts is where I really do shoot for those upside and hopefully get those guys who can really rise up and become a key fixture in your lineup. So I'd be going Hyde here. But I guess who are a couple undrafted guys that you'd like to call out before we close this out and move to the next segment?
Yeah, I'll throw out Aiden O'Connell, only because I think that if we were doing this again right now, just in kind of like factor in real life circumstances here, looking at the way that the actual draft went, Hendon Hooker went early in the 3rd round. A couple other quarterbacks, Clayton Tune went in the 4th round. Stetson Bennett went in the 4th round. Aiden O'Connell didn't go to the middle of the 5th. I think in reality he would go a bit higher, given that he's already kind of made his way into a starting quarterback position, at least temporarily. As far as other undrafted guys, not a ton of others.
I don't think there are too many left. I think Zach Evans is on there. He's had a little bit of relevance, but there's not much left.
Just Justin Joey's DraftKings lineup, not really on the field.
Yeah, Zach Evans is fucking dead to me.
Sorry, I'm assuming he's not in this time around.
No. Between my DraftKings lineup, $20 actual dollars and about $175 fab dollars, this fucking guy has basically bankrupted me this year. Officially all out on Zach Evans.
Oh, man. Well, That was definitely fun for me to go. I hope all the listeners enjoy that. It's interesting to see how values have changed since the off season, and part of the fun of the rookie draft is that you kind of are taking your shot. You're gonna miss some, you're gonna hit some, and obviously that's where you can see the value in your overall team go is if you hit on these picks or if you miss on them. So definitely fun to go. I hope you guys enjoyed it, but we're going to move on to quickly a league update before getting to the DraftKings lineup challenge. We had a couple trades, so we just want to hit on those some quicks in our league. So one of the first trades we had is actually both trades involved a podcaster. We had the Wilkinson Bros acquired Derrick Henry and a 2026 second round pick, and they gave up a 2025 first round pick. So Ryan, why don't you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, you love it when something works right away. So we actually won last week solely because of this trade. If we had started anyone on our bench over Derrick Henry, we would have lost to Crope. So right off the bat, helped us get a win in week 8. It wasn't a huge move, but we just felt like it gave us a little bit more depth and that ability to win a couple more weeks. And we didn't really feel like we gave up too much. I know they're different years, but we moved back from a first to a second basically to get him. And it's not like he's done after this year, although he's older. He's still going to have some value next year, maybe even a year or two after that. So we thought it was a good trade.
Yeah, it probably would have been nice to see him get traded, right? I mean, traded in real life, right? When you make that deal.
Yeah, we were hoping he might have went somewhere better, but I don't actually think it's the worst thing that he stays there either. Obviously, we just talked a little bit about Spears potentially taking over, but it hasn't happened too much so far.
And Will Levis is opening up that offense. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, this could be a fire offense now. So,
God, high scoring.
Yeah, all he has to do is not even miraculously. All he has to do is be functional enough to lead them into some game scripts where they're not behind, and he'll get 15, 20 carries.
I agree though. I don't think you gave up a lot for Henry. I generally would have expected to see probably a little bit more because again, you only moved back around in a separate year, so that's still decent ammo for future trades too to have that extra second round pick. So
yeah, I mean, I get exactly why Rosinski's did it because you look at the running backs they have.
They had too many running backs. Yeah.
They can't start them all. Yeah.
They got Taylor, Pollard, Boster, Eckler, and Gibbs.
Yeah.
And they just gave away an older running back for a first round. So they won. Ryan won.
Yeah.
So overall for the league, I think it's a good trade.
Yeah. But it wasn't the only trade. Another member or special weekly member right now on our pod was involved in another trade. Our own Schluter right here acquired Stephon Diggs, Damian Pierce, and Rashee Rice, and he gave up Chris Olave and Scott's 2024 first round pick. So not his own, another league member's 2024 first round pick. So Schluter, why don't you speak to it?
Well, first off, anytime you make a trade in this league, I'm sure it's like others, it's exhausting.
Yeah.
A lot of back and forth.
Some owners more than the others.
You talk for days, you talk for days, you think you're there, and then all of a sudden you send a trade, you read it, and you're like, what did they just send me? That's not what, So I was back and forth with the Clark family for about 3 days, and I really wanted Diggs. That was the bottom line. I wanted something right now. I looked at my team, and I said, I'm young. I don't really need – my whole team is rookies. Like that redraft we just did, I had 5 people on that top 24 list, So I'm like, I don't need my pick. So I was okay giving away Scott's first round pick, especially because I just traded him Kirk Cousins. So to me, his value, that pick was only going to lose value, if Kirk Cousins was still
with us.
So I was okay with that. And then Olave's just wasn't producing. So we talked about how good he was going to be. Oh, he's got Carr now. He's going to be so much better. No, he's not. And then what happens? We still got to wait for another QB to come in for him to be even better. So when is Olave going to produce for me? So I wanted Diggs bad, and my RBs needed help. So I got Pierce, who's not much help, but a lot of hope, you could say. But the big seller was Rice. I'm big on Rice, So to me, I got A.J. Brown now. So I got a number 1 QBs. Wide receiver 1, I got Diggs, another one, and then Rice could be Mahomes number 1. So I'm pretty good there. We talked about Zay Flowers. I got him. I got JSN. So I'm good. I'm happy with what I gave up and what I got, and I think I'm ready to take all you guys down.
So basically, you have the top two best quarterbacks, number one receivers, and Allen and Hurts. Just saying.
that is, yeah. When I play you, it just negates everything.
Yeah, it'll be back and forth. But no, we talked a little bit about it. I liked the trade for your side. I could see both sides, but I like Rice as well. I just took him in the rookie redraft that we did. I think he's a huge potential opportunity there, and Diggs is obviously a stud right now. And first round pick could be valuable, could not. You see if you head on it next year, but I liked the trade.
Yeah, I mean, I looked at my team. I have 18 people that are sophomores or younger. So I looked at my rookie picks and I'm like, I don't really need them, and I still have two 2025 first rounders.
Yeah,
sitting there. So my 2024, it just didn't look as valuable to me. It seemed like an easy trade to me.
Yeah.
And not to mention, right, like, it's not like Stephon Diggs is old and busted. He still has quite a bit, you would think, left in the tank. He's in a great offense. And, even if you only get 2 more years of this version of Stephon Diggs, I think that's an easy trade to make, right? In exchange for a first round pick, which we know from the exercise we just did, could easily be a Bryce Young miss,
More on. Yeah, no, I mean, I think the addition of Rashid Rice for me tilts it towards your scales. I think that that extra sweetener is big because that could be what the first round pick was. So then it's Olave for Diggs and Pierce. So I don't think there was an actual loser in that trade, which is great to see. But I think for you, you're set up to definitely be very strong this year. I think you've had a tougher schedule than most in the league, but you're still competing for a playoff spot, and you're set up for the future, which I'm more envious because I don't have as many young wide receivers on my team. So it's a pretty good spot to be in for you.
Yeah, I'm real wide receiver strong. I love it.
But you didn't score the most this past week. Someone with their old and busted wide receivers did, and that's your boy right here, Dave Reed. Had 183.4 points for the high score this week. And I had Howell on my bench, and if I didn't, I would have had the high score of the entire year, over 200 points. It's disappointing, but it was a good showing. So I felt good about that to finally get up in the high side after having the second lowest score of the year. Still not the lowest. That's still held, and still after this week by the Wilkinson brothers, because the lowest score this week, which is pretty crazy, was 115.96 by Clark Sauce. Those were we're getting to a point. We're in the middle of the season. There's only, Brian, I think there's only 6 weeks for you to lose that record, and the lowest scores are increasing. So I don't know how you're feeling.
Hey. There were no buys the last week. We talked about that, so it's an outlier week, hopefully. But not gonna lie, we're getting a little worried over here. Someone come on down.
Oh man, insane! But yeah, it's it'll be a fun. Week 14 is gonna be very fun to see if anyone just straight up shits the bed and takes it from you. Oh man. But with that, we're going to finally get to the main event, the DK lineup showdown here. So, again, we each pick a lineup. We're playing against each other. Winner takes all. Schluter's going to try his best to knock out as many of the podcast hosts as possible. Harrison, when he was on 2 weeks ago, took out 2 of the hosts, but didn't do the clean sweep that I know Schluter's aiming to get here. But we're going to go around and list out who our lineups are. So, Schluter, man of the hour, why don't you start us off with who your quarterback is?
All right, let me pull it right up here. So, I love these. You go back and forth 15 times, and then you change it, and then you go back again. So, I always have the strategy of a low QB. I don't know why, I just always do it. So, I went Minshew. He's in there. He's Carolina. I don't know what's going to happen, but he might have that magic and throw some bombs, get that 4 touchdown game, or it could be a dud, but for 52. Yeah, so he cost 5,200. So I'm okay with that, with the potential of him just going off.
Yeah, I'll jump in because I had the exact same thought and also went with Minshew. I wanted to save a little money on quarterback as well, and he seemed like a pretty good value. Could have a big game.
And I'll jump in too because I as well. So we're all negating stuff. Have Minshew, but Minshew's my boy. I love him. He's on my team as well. And the Steichen offense doesn't really matter apparently who's quarterback. You're going to get fantasy points, and Carolina's D, which has not been good, should give up some. So I think there's good value there. Obviously, they may dominate in the run game with Jonathan Taylor. Hoping that's not the case, and Minshew racks up some points. But Joe, did you break the tie here, or did you go Minshew as well?
No, I didn't go Minshew. But I do love the pick. If we're being totally honest, he rushed for a touchdown 2 weeks ago, had a down week last week. You got to think he'll bounce back. I originally was looking at Josh Downs potentially in one of my iterations of this lineup at wide receiver. So I like the pick. But I actually went with Dak Prescott. I think that I wanted a little bit more of a high-powered offense and a big game against Philadelphia. I think they're going to need him in this type of game where, Philadelphia, they tend to be stronger against the run than against the pass. They've had injuries in their secondary early on in the season. CeeDee Lamb will probably get the Darius Slay treatment, but I like the upside with Dak here. He's been looking good the last couple weeks.
Dig it. We need someone to break it here. So we're all negating each other except for Joe at quarterback. But Schluter, why don't you jump in and tell us your running backs?
So I got a high-priced one. I watched this guy just put up points on me endlessly last week. Kamara. I went with Kamara. I think he's going to crush Chicago. They're going to jump out. They're going to get a lead. Just feed them, especially with last week's performance. So I did Kamara. He was expensive, $8,100.
And what about running back 2?
Oh, running back 2. I saw a little thing about Pierce being injured, so I put in Singletary.
Oh, interesting. What's his price?
$4,300.
All right. Saving some value there. I'll jump in because I also have Kamara, so we are not deviating too much yet.
I'll jump in because I also have Kamara.
Okay. I mean, Kamara, he's going to feast. I don't think the Chicago defense is not good. Kamara can cover him up, but Kamara is also the number 1 wide receiver. I think in the league from targets. And this is a full point PPR, so Kamara was one of those players, and I think it's going across the board here. You wanted to try and get in your lineup if you could, because it seems like a safe floor and has a potential blow-up game. But I also at RB2 have Bijan Robinson at 6,100. Going up against Minnesota, defense also not very strong. Heineke is in, so they could be slinging a little bit more. But I also think if Drake London's not in there, they'd probably lean Bijan a bit more. And he did score his first rushing touchdown, I believe, last week. So I think he's starting to build up. And I think they're going to beat down on Minnesota, who's going to be playing against a rookie quarterback. And they'll probably want to ice the game early. So going with Bijan there. But Ryan, why don't you finish up on who your RB2 is?
Yeah, so I went with Kamara as well, and then I had the same type of strategy as Schluter. I basically wanted to save as much money as I possibly could with my second running back and spend it elsewhere. So I went actually with Rashawn Johnson.
Interesting.
I feel like it's kind of up in the air on what could happen there, and Foreman was pretty terrible last week, so who knows? Maybe Johnson gets some more touches this week. That's who I went with.
I don't hate it.
Yeah, Khalil Herbert's still out. I don't hate it either.
How much is he, Ryan?
He was $4,500.
It's good value.
All right, so this is looking like a pretty well planned out selection for me. It's either going to go great or it's going to go terribly poorly. But my RB1 is Jonathan Taylor, $6,400.
Okay.
Seems as if
Look at that twist.
If Taylor runs for 2 or 3 touchdowns, then I might have this one in the bag. But I honestly, Carolina, it's the same logic as taking Minshew. Carolina's defense stinks. Their rush defense especially stinks. And 2 weeks ago, he was kind of showing. I mean, look, Zach Moss is still there. He's still getting carries. But I think at this point, it's safe to say that Taylor has resumed his role as at least the leader in the backfield there. So he'll have to fight with Moss for some carries and maybe especially in a game like this where I expect him to be leading. But I thought it was pretty good value for Taylor there, getting him at a good price when, maybe the market hasn't actually fully caught up to him being fully back. And then my RB2, drum roll please, there's going to be a lot of suspense for this one. I went with Alvin Kamara.
You had to have him in. I think across the board, there's
Yeah.
you couldn't miss having him, and he's going to blow up, potentially be RB1. So
Yeah, my only concern with selecting Kamara, and I mean now, like looking back in retrospect, I kind of wish I had zagged because like opportunities to like fade the contestants are always great, but like if they're up by a ton and the game script isn't conducive to him catching a lot of passes, and maybe he doesn't rush for touchdowns, maybe Chris Olave actually catches a touchdown pass for once in his life. Yeah. But yeah, no, it's a great spot at home, smash play, and he's honestly looked great. So
yeah, love it. Moving on to wide receivers. Schluter, I'll let you take it away once again.
Yeah, so I did the double up. So I got Downs for 5,200 from Minshew. So hopefully that combination goes and stacks me some points. And then I laughed this next pick for 6,300. I did Olave. Because
There you go.
of course, I just traded him away, so I'm either going to be happy or sad. Now I'm happy either way.
Hedge. It's the hedge.
So I got Olave on there for 63, and then I went real cheap with Jaden Reed for 3,600.
Oh wow! I didn't realize
last week, so
I didn't realize it that low.
I
also keep following you. Had Downs as for my stack, but I mentioned it. I took him in the rookie redo draft, so I love Downs again. 5,200. Him and Pittman have been getting pretty high targets. I was going back and forth between who to put in the lineup, but honestly, I feel like Downs has the safer floor, at least when it comes to targets, than Pittman. Pittman obviously can blow up, but Pittman also isn't getting the deep targets as you want. I think he had I forgot how many. I think he had 8 receptions for 40 yards or something last week, excuse me. So Down seems like he's a little bit more slippery right now, so I went with him. I went paid up a bit because I needed to have someone who wasn't a rookie cheap wide receiver, and went Devonta Smith at 7,100. I feel like that Philly-Dallas game is either going to be a defensive struggle or going to be a highlight reel there. And I think Devonta, it has a lot of opportunity to kind of going up against the secondary corners and with Dallas to get a nice touchdown. He had a bounce back game last week. And wide receiver 3 at $4,000. I mentioned him briefly before, but Demario Douglas, I think, has a lot of opportunity for New England. And he's been getting involved. The team seems to be hyping him since the preseason there. So with Bourne going down and Parker potentially in a concussion, I think there's a lot of opportunities this week against a defense that just lost their 2 best edge rushers in Washington, the Commanders. So Mac Jones may have a little bit more time, not having to run for his life because he doesn't have as much talent chasing him. So I think Demario Douglas is a good value there at $4,000.
Yeah, they've gotten some offensive line help back over the last couple of weeks, which I think has kind of contributed to their looking less like a piece of shit offense. So if that all kind of comes together, then I like Douglas there.
Why don't you tell us who you got, Joe?
So for me, obviously, as you can probably expect, I went with the Dak Prescott CeeDee Lamb stack, $8,200. Like I said earlier, he's been the focal point of the offense. Big game. I expect it to be tightly contested. These are the games where you lean on your guys, and I just expect him to get a ton of targets and hopefully get in the end zone. That would be great. Next, I actually have the number 1 wide receiver lately for the New Orleans Saints, which is my man Rashid Shaheed.
I love that. I had him in my line a few times as well.
I actually really like the upside there. I mean, look, it just seems like he's got more chemistry with Derek Carr right now than Chris Olave does. And even if he kind of doesn't need a ton, right? Even if he only, I think last week he had 2 catches and he was over 100 yards. So I really liked what I've seen there. So let's go for the upside play. And then number 3, I'm going for Jahan Dotson. He's been heating up the last 2 weeks. I'm not 100% certain Curtis Samuel's going to play. He's dealing with a toe or foot. He needs another look. He didn't practice today. I mean, honestly, if he plays, then so be it. But I just, the play isn't totally anchored on Curtis Samuel not playing. I mean, Dotson has had I have like 16 or 17 targets the last 2 weeks, and he talked about earlier, he looks a lot better. But if Samuel's not out there, I like to play even more.
Yeah, and I'll jump in. I also had to get a piece of that Dallas offense, so I went with CeeDee Lamb as my wide receiver one. Same thing Joe said. I feel like he's going to go crazy this week. Also, the Eagles' defense against wide receivers is ranked like 32nd, I think, so should go crazy. My wide receiver two, I actually went with Adam Thielen. Another day, another 7 catches. Guy just catches passes week after week. So a lot of targets there, and I think he's going to get at least 7 catches again. And then my wide receiver 3, I actually went with Nico Collins. Sort of a boomer bust pick, but Stroud had his worst game last week, so his numbers weren't great. But before that, Collins has been doing pretty well, and you never know, he could go off. And yeah, those are my 3.
I dig it. And
Yeah.
and Schluter, your final tight end, flex, and defense. What do you got?
All right. Tight end was obviously easy. Best tight end in the game, Mark Andrews.
That was definitely the first person you put in your lineup.
Oh, easy. So he was 6,800. And then I really hope this pans out with all you Cowboys. So I got Tony Pollard was going to get 3 rushing touchdowns for 68. And then the defense going against a rookie QB. So I picked Atlanta.
All right.
Going against Aaron.
Good. That's good value.
For 3,700.
How about you, Joe?
Yeah, so for me, tight end, I went with the old triple stack. Went with my man Ferguson. Fergie's been good. Yeah, I mean, honestly, he's had mostly hits this season relative to misses. I think actually 2 weeks ago he had maybe one of his like bigger dud games with 0 catches, and then last week he was back. 4 receptions, 50 yards, back in the end zone with a nice touchdown grab. So Jake Ferguson, a tight end. Flex, I went with Chuba Hubbard. I honestly, again, Indianapolis' defense has not looked promising. Hubbard got a bunch of carries inside the 5 and the 10 last weekend, just didn't convert them. And unfortunately, as someone who owns Miles Sanders, it just doesn't seem like he is really a huge part of this offense right now. Hubbard looks good. He's been getting the predominant carries. So for $5,000 as a flex start throw, maybe he rushes for a touchdown. I like Hubbard. And then for my defense, I literally went to the cheapest option on the board. I scrolled all the way down to the very bottom for $2,300, and I took the New York Giants at Vegas against the aforementioned Aidan O'Connell, who I think stinks, honestly. I mean, he's not great. And the Giants defense has low-key looked great the last couple of weeks. I mean, they after giving up 31 points to Miami, they gave up 14 to Buffalo, and then 7 to Washington, and then, basically 7 in all but 4 quarters to the Jets this past week. So the Giants defense appears to have kind of turned a corner. They look like they're playing great football. And for $2,300, I think that is a lot of value. So.
No, that's great. I didn't even scroll down that far. Oh, that's great value.
Yeah, it's great. I'll jump because I have a couple of the same you just mentioned, Joe. I went bottom of the barrel, 2,300 Giants as well. Just too good a value for. It just seems like a safe one. If Aidan O'Connell somehow carves up a defense that Josh Allen couldn't carve up, I'd be shocked here. Granted, there's no Leonard Williams anymore, but I still think it's going to be a strong defense. I also had Jake Ferguson at tight end as well. I've liked what I've seen at $4,000. Seems like great value, and I do want a little bit more pieces of that game. But you may have noticed I've had a lot of cheap options in my lineup because I wanted to pay up here. And at my flex, I went Saquon Barkley here. Granted, he just picked up questionable tag, and we are recording this on a Wednesday night, and we can't change our lineups on any news. But I feel pretty confident that he'll be able to play still, and going up against the Raiders as well. With Daniel Jones coming back from injury, I think they'll still give Barkley a pretty healthy workload, and I just really wanted to get a 3-stack of running backs that I think could all finish in the top 5 to really give me a leg up here. So Jake Ferguson, and then he's at 7,900, so I paid up for that. But it's Jake Ferguson, Barkley, and Giants D. How about you, Ryan? How do you round out your lineup?
Yeah, so Dave, you're going to love my tight end here. I had to save some money. I was out of cash. So I actually went with Logan Thomas.
It's a great call. I flexed him in the first line.
Yeah, I think he could be a solid pick, although I also just saw that he has a questionable tag. So hopefully he plays. But I went with Logan Thomas. And then, Dave, you touched on this as well. In my flex, I went with Demario Douglas. Same reasons. Kendrick Bourne tore his ACL. Parker's in concussion protocol. Someone has to catch the ball. Just hopefully Mac Jones can actually get him the ball. And then for that same reason, on defense, I actually went with the Commanders. Playing the Patriots, feel like it could be a bit of a mess there. So felt like I could get some value there, that New England just doesn't have that offensive firepower to hit big plays right now.
All right, I dig it. Well, great lineups. Again, I'll probably win, but there's a good value in effort from you guys. I appreciate it. But with that, obviously, we touched on a few games based on our lineups. But any other closing thoughts that you guys have for this upcoming week?
Well, I'll just be paying close attention to Jaron Hall, see how he does starting and how he handles everything. If he can hold off Dobbs, I'd be happy because I picked him up, off waivers. So that'll be a win for me in Dynasty if he can tear it up.
That's right.
Yeah, a lot of new quarterbacks to check out this week, so I feel like that'll be interesting in general. And then in terms of the
good ones, but new ones.
Well, we don't know yet. But in terms of our league, we have the number 1 and the number 2 playing each other. Adam and Crope's team playing each other, so someone's going to lose, which is great for the rest of us.
I have the same record as Crope. Please.
He's got a few more points than you.
Yeah, just like 200. It's fine. As far as the NFL go, I think that the marquee matchups, you got the Bills back in Cincinnati since the Hamler incident last year. So that see what spectacle the NFL puts on for that, because they're going to milk it. But it'll be interesting to see how the teams react for that. And there are a lot of other ugly matchups, but 9:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. You got Chiefs and Dolphins playing Frankfurt, Germany, which is, in my opinion, the best game of the week. Be a fun way to start the morning, having a coffee with my kids jumping on my head, watching some NFL Sunday. So remember to wake up early. For anyone who happens to listen to this on the West Coast, which I hope we're growing our audience, which I doubt we are based on the metrics so far, but we're doing okay. Make sure you set your alarm clocks early for that. But with that said, boys, I think it was another good pod. It was a long one. We got a lot of content in there. I hope everyone listened, if you had to split it up. But enjoy. Scooter, thank you for joining. And
Having me, guys.
Thanks for listening to NSFW Dynasty Podcast.
And those great.
Episode of the NSFW Dynasty Podcast. Tune in next time.